Welcome back to another episode of the Scared Stiff Horror Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Plumatello, writer and director of the upcoming horror film Halloween Candy, and joined by my co-host, first time saying that, Dalen Lane. How you doing, Dalen?
Good, has such a good ring to it. Sounds so nice.
It does. I'll say it again. My co-host, Dalen Lane.
Thank you. Ego boost. How are you holding up?
I'm doing well. It's been a few weeks since we had you on last.
I know. I missed you. I missed the audience. I missed talking about films that we love. I'm happy to be back.
Talking shit about old horror movies. You miss it, huh?
Well, more importantly, so did you get it's March. Did you get your green shamrock shake? Because I know it's very important to you every year.
Yes, I had my Lepapalooza. And I watched a marathon of Leprechaun movies, and I had my Shamrock Shake.
The one shake lasted throughout all the films?
It did not. It made it
Ah.
until maybe the second scene of the first movie, but the sugar lasted me the rest of the night.
It's like an Irish cream flavor, or is it mint, or it's vanilla? I've never had one.
Yeah, I think it's peppermint. It's like a vanilla shake with peppermint, I believe.
But
Yeah.
no chocolate chips?
No? I think they do make an alternative version. It might have chocolate in it. I think last year they introduced alternative version of the Shamrock Shake. I didn't have it. I'm a purist with my Shamrock Shake.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Alright. It always looks really good and looks very pretty.
it's actually the only time I have a milkshake all year. I don't drink their other milkshakes, but I will make my exception for St. Patrick's Day.
They need to make a Halloween one.
Yeah, I'm surprised they don't. It's very easy to throw a little orange in there or some purple.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you can have, like, a creamsicle flavor, and that's
Ooh.
not the best, but it's not bad.
I think pumpkin rules the fall, and I think that's what stores go to when it comes to their Halloween beverage.
Yeah, and they could very easily do, like, a pumpkin milkshake, which would be pretty good, I think. That'd be tasty.
Yeah, but the funny thing about pumpkin, it's if you eat pumpkin on its own, it's not very good, but using the right amount of it and then mixing it with the right things, man, it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I know people though who are very polarized on like pumpkin pie, but I love pumpkin pie and I make chocolate pumpkin pie and I love that pie.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to eventually get to the Halloween season because we missed it this past year. We started the podcast after Halloween.
I know.
But today we are going to cover a different holiday, St. Patrick's Day, specifically the Leprechaun franchise.
And oh boy, struggle bus city.
Man, I knew you'd be excited for this episode.
Oh, I don't know that I've ever dragged my feet so hard, like nails clawing at the floor to not watch certain films because woo, I think I forgot how much I disliked this franchise. No offense. It's very creative, but not for me.
It's a mixed bag, this franchise. And it's
Yeah.
actually went I wanna say in the core Leprechaun series, I think there's 8 films now, which is quite impressive.
Yeah, I mean, two. It's a lot. It's
So
a
we're gonna
lot.
cover all 8 today.
Oof.
We're not gonna do a full deep dive like we usually do, but we wanna talk about all these movies. They all deserve your attention.
Now, do you want to go in order? How do you want to work this with that many films?
Yeah, we'll just go straight up in order.
Okay.
Start at the beginning and go to the end.
All right.
So overall, what are your thoughts on this franchise?
Uh, so, you know what? If to be perfectly honest, I think it's not the franchise for me, but I could see plenty of people who are into creature features or more comically leaning horror films kind of appreciate maybe not all of them, but a few of them. I think I am into creature features, but there's something about this. It feels, and I love musicals and I love campy things. So I can't really explain what it is about this that I don't love. I think it just, I don't know. I just don't like it. I just don't find it funny. I find it kind of annoying. Um, Yeah, not the franchise for me. How do you feel about it?
They're fun for what they are. It's a very interesting franchise, which I don't know if they're actually like sequels. I know they're numbered, but none of them really lead to the next one. They're all kind of standalone stories, and they really got creative from the beginning. Like, other than part 5 and 6, they never
Mhm,
replicated scenarios. Like, each movie took it to a whole new location, as far as space. Um, the only one that was like a legit sequel would have been the 8th one, which was a direct sequel to the first one. And I also thought I don't even know if this is supposed to be the same Leprechaun. It's the same actor for most of them,
mhm,
but the he'll die in one of the movies, and then the next movie he's just back as if nothing happened.
mhm,
And little details like his age changes dramatically throughout the movies. So the first movie, I think they say he's 600, and part 2 he's 800, and he's as old as 3000 in some of the other ones. So they may not
mhm.
be the same Leprechaun.
Yeah, I feel like it's very chaotic.
Yeah.
I I like when films are standalone, but I think I prefer that for TV series. Like when episodes are standalone or there's only a couple of things that kind of bleed into other episodes or other seasons. But for my film, if it's going to be like Leprechaun, Leprechaun 2, Leprechaun 3, I do think there should be some sort of level of continuity separate from like Warwick Davis playing Leprechaun in those films. If that's the only thing that's staying, the stabilizing factor, it feels weird, especially if age is different.
Yeah. And then some of the rules based on his magic change throughout. And even in part 6, he no longer has magic. He actually fights by like punching, you know? So is it the same Leprechaun? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know either. Like it looks like it, but to your point, I think it's honestly a good point. Like even in the first one, come to think of it, he specifically has 100 gold coins. And I don't know that that's really specifically mentioned, like that number of coins is mentioned in any of the other films. In fact, I think the Leprechaun Origins one doesn't even mention an amount of coins. And when you see them, it's like a handful of them. So again, it's kind of confusing. It's weird.
Yeah, and then some of the movies, one of them, his gold coins actually you can make a wish when you hold one. So like certain
Yep.
elements are added to the lore for specific movies that weren't there originally, which makes me think
Hmm.
that they aren't the same Leprechaun. They just all look the same.
Yeah.
And also, one of the earlier films, he was bald when they took off his hat, and later on, he has a full head of hair. Maybe
He's
maybe I'm
getting
looking into it
stylish.
too much.
No, but I mean, I think that's kind of again like I think as a viewer, maybe some in the audience might be okay with that. They might even prefer that. But at least for myself, like I do not. It kind of takes me out of the film and out of the franchise. I just can't get into it enough. It's like I want to be able to really invest in the franchise, but if you're going to keep making things like not match and kind of kill any continuity, then I can't maintain the focus as well.
It's like what Annie Wilkes says. He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodle car. You could say that at the beginning of each of these Leprechaun movies because he'll get blown up in one movie and he's back as if nothing happened in the next.
Yeah,
So,
and like he loses limbs. Like in the first film, he loses a limb and then it just kind of comes back. And then later on in space, he is totally killed, but his life essence gets put into the genitals of a man that then comes out when aroused. Like what? None of this. And again, I'm all for all of that. Cool, but what are the rules of the lore then? What are they?
yeah, I guess in a way you could say the filmmakers were not limited by, following a lore to the T. They're able to kind of have creative liberty, but
Hmm.
but then again, that's why these movies aren't for everybody. They're entertaining while they're on, but because of the discontinuity with the rules and the lore,
Hmm.
I feel it's not as beloved as other films, and that could partly be because of it, because of this lack
So
of continuity.
do you have a favorite and least favorite of the eight?
Sure. There's a
I wish you guys could see Doug. I wish you could, because we do this on video, but I wish you could see the hesitation in his face and kind of the immediate panic.
no, I do. Well, the first one, I guess for most franchises, you could say the first one's the best, but the first one's solid. I will say I do like the first movie.
Uh-huh.
I My least favorite, I can say by far, is Space. And not because it's in space and, not all horror movies in space are immediately bad. Honestly, I just could not get into it. For some reason, the
What do you mean not
character
all horror movies in space are bad? Do you wanna expand on that?
we'll table that for another episode. Oh,
Uh-huh.
goodness gracious. But I don't know. It I I'll just say it took me several times. When I watch Leprechaun in space, I need to break it down. I can't do it in one sitting. Sorry to the
Mhm.
filmmakers. I had need to break it up. I just cannot sit there in one sitting and watch Leprechaun in space.
Yeah.
I can watch the other ones in one sitting. For some reason, there's certain movies I'm just like, I can't do it. I need to break it up. Because I can't in my head be like, I have 90 minutes to sit here. So if okay, I'll do 30 minutes today, 30 minutes tomorrow, then it's more manageable. Yeah.
That is the good thing about these films. I think every single one of them, including the newer iterations, are all around the 90-minute mark. So, at least they're not terribly long, even if they feel like they are an eternity to get through. And again, like, I know that I'm definitely giving some hate to these films. They still do serve a purpose in the genre, of course, and I know some people do really enjoy them, like they're fun. Um, but wow, I don't know. Ugh,
Well, let's start with part one.
okay.
What are your thoughts on Leprechaun 1?
I'm probably with you. I think it's the best one. It's a mixed bag of gore, of comedy. You have a young Jennifer Aniston. You have the always talented Warwick Davis, who is great in everything that he does, even the bad things. Um, and I think that the lines are pretty funny, at least from what the leprechaun does. And I do like the specifics, like, leprechaun has 100 coins. We are first introduced to him where he's actually captured. So there are certain things that kind of take from the actual lore, the urban legends, the fantasy and whatnot, and are very much incorporated into the film. And so you can kind of get behind it. I just wish that by the end it was the end. Yourself?
Yeah, no, they were very clear, like, they wanted this to be a franchise, you can tell. You had your wisecracking villain that carries the movie. It never let itself get too serious. Like, I know the original intent, Mark Jones, the director, wanted to make it a more serious killer, but
Mhm.
Warwick Davis wanted to add a lot of the comedic elements. So,
I feel like that checks out. What makes you think from the jump that they wanted it to be an actual franchise, like that they would have sequels?
well, they pretty much did one a year for the next 3 years after that. So there was very little time in between films. But I just felt like that was the early '90s. That was the modum operandi of these horror movies. Like, I felt like a lot of these horror movies were almost pilots for franchises in the early '90s. You had, like, Doctor Giggles, which I felt
Mhm.
like they were intending a franchise for that. It just didn't do well.
Mhm.
And Leprechaun felt that way. You're making a villain that's bankable, that can carry a scene,
Mhm.
and it just felt like this was a launching pad for a franchise.
Yeah.
It had all the ingredients of, like, the next Freddy, what they're in what they were intending to do. Kind of like a evil but lovable villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because this first film actually did win 2 awards.
Oh.
It did win a Chainsaw Award for Best FX Makeup, which I think, if you do watch it, the leprechaun's costume and makeup and prosthetics do look pretty good. But it also won for the worst film of the year. So, really interesting. That
Yeah.
they then kind of did double down to make more of them.
I actually really liked the characters they set up. There was only maybe like 5 characters in the movie, 5 main characters.
Mhm.
You know, you had Ozzy, who was played by Mark Holton, Francis from Pee
Mhm.
Wee Herman, which was kinda fun.
Mhm.
You know, you
Mhm.
had Nathan and Alex, the little boy. But I think, like, Jennifer Aniston, like, you could tell she had such presence, and it really helped carry the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like, she had star you could tell she had star power from even from Leprechaun.
She had a great head of hair in this movie too. Like, she's known for her hair, but she had quite a head of hair in this too.
Oh, it's definitely very early '90s. She had
Yeah.
the LA Gear sneakers.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
fun.
I think it
Mhm.
never took itself too seriously, which always helps these movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple fun little details in the film. It was actually if you notice the credits, there was a special thanks to George Lucas.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think Warwick Davis was attached to Lucasfilm, and so they actually had to ask permission from Lucasfilm to use Warwick Davis.
Oh, you think he interesting.
Yeah, he was under contract because I think they had just done, like, Willow and, you know, he was in Return of the Jedi as Wicket the
Mhm.
Ewok.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tony Cox and Deep Roy were also stunt doubles for Mr. Warwick, which is kinda fun.
Interesting. I
Yeah,
never would
Deep
have thought that he would be under, like, a strict contract like that, but I guess that also makes sense for something like Lucasfilms, especially given the time.
yeah. So, anything stand out from the movie you wanna talk about, or are you done with part 1?
I think, to, like, wrap up my thoughts, honestly, if you're gonna watch any of the films from this is probably the best one to watch. This is not really boring. It does flow. There are some really funny aspects to it. And I like to your point, I think the acting is really not bad. Anytime that I can see Mark Holton in a film, because also he's done stuff, but not a ton. Really, I think, or not a ton of mainstream work, maybe, but I really like him in the film. A little not an Easter egg, but something that I appreciated is when you first see him, he has a piece of chewing gum, and in Pee Wee, he has a piece of chewing gum. So I just like that little connection, even though totally probably unrelated. Um, but no, I think this is probably the film that's most worth watching if you're going to actually spend time on the franchise.
I really hope that that was a nod to Pee Wee Herman.
I hope so, but I don't know.
If only they threw a bicycle line in there.
Yeah.
When the leprechaun was riding the bike and then Ozzy tries to steal it, that would be fun.
Yeah. Yep. That would be great. What about you? Any final thoughts on it?
Uh, yeah, well, another fun connection, actually. The hospital in the end scene was actually the same hospital from Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. And some of the sets
Ah.
were actually used in Little House on the Prairie and the Waltons, which is kinda
Oh,
fun.
wow.
Yeah,
That's a very cool little tidbit.
yeah. One weird setup, though, I thought was kinda strange is at the beginning, the guy has the heart attack, or he has the stroke, the old man, Mr.
Mhm,
O'Grady, and then later on, they go to visit him in the hospital to find out about this leprechaun. And by the time they
mhm.
get there, he's dead. So it was really strange that they didn't have him just die of a stroke, but they kinda kept him alive just to give them a reason to leave the house. Cause
But they also did that because remember the leprechaun pretends to be him in the hospital.
right,
They need the shock value of thinking that, "Oh, he's alive, and now not only is he dead, but the leprechaun's pretending to be him."
right. I guess so.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah. But it wa
Ugh.
a fun little tidbit which will come into play in one of the later sequels is that, uh, Ozzy swallows one of the golden pieces, one of the
Mhm.
golden coins, and so that's why the leprechaun is going after him because he swallowed the gold coin, which comes into play in Leprechaun 8, so we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, can't
Yeah.
wait.
Alright, I guess we'll move on to Leprechaun 2. Leprechaun 2 is the only film in the Leprechaun series that take place on St. Patrick's Day.
Oh boy.
Seems like a given that that's the day it would take place, but again, the series never limited themselves. to one day or one location. So it's on point.
So 2 and 3 are my most difficult watches, meaning that I couldn't watch them. Like 2, at some point I walked away, and 3, I think my brain just shut off at some point. Um, I found though for Leprechaun 2, I think part of it was I actually really like the beginning when Warwick Davis's character is like with, I guess you're supposed to think like a slave. Maybe this man had done him wrong, and he's trying to wed the daughter. And the setup of this film is the leprechaun's trying to find a bride, and it's kind of like an old, it's like an old timey. What's the term?
Like
Uh,
a period
it's
piece.
from the Yes, thank you. It's a
Yes.
period piece, and then it's immediately not, and it's really different, and it's also like they're giving, you're now in modern day like Hollywood. They're giving these spooky tours and stuff, which also cool, but not for this film. It just feels so dramatic in ways that it doesn't need to be. I don't know, I really don't like this film.
Actually, the actress who played the lead character, they offered that role to Jennifer Aniston originally, and it
Mm,
was supposed to be a direct continuation, but I think they only offered her like 15,000, and at that point she was, I think, just started doing Friends, and I think she actually tried to distance herself from the film initially. So that's probably why she turned it down. But so yeah, this is the 1,000 years later from the opening scene that we see when he tries to marry this farmer's daughter or his slave's daughter.
mhm,
And in the first movie, he says that he's 600 years old. So in part two, this is 1,000 years later. So this is what I think. Is this a different leprechaun than it was in the first movie?
mm.
You know,
Maybe.
possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I
But
find it
like, what would the
entertaining.
point be? In your opinion, what would the point be in shifting something? Because really, it's a non-entity. Like that's like to the character. I guess the age is maybe important, but to shift something like that, to switch it to a totally different age, like what would the benefit of that be?
What would the benefit of making him older?
Just giving him a totally different age.
I don't know. Unless they wanted to really make it like a full millennium later, 1,000 years later. And I
Mm,
also think maybe in a movie that's this far-fetched, maybe the writers they're like, "People don't care if we change the age." Maybe it's a throwaway line from the first movie. I don't know. I
mm,
don't know if it benefits anything by
yeah.
changing the age, but I think maybe it's a sign that it's not the same guy because the first one is supposed to be stuck down the well still.
Mm, right. True.
Yeah. But they had a couple fun deaths in the movie. They kinda had
Uh-huh.
the Dumb and Dumber death when, when Jim Carrey's driving and he sees the 2 lights flashing, and it wakes him up from his daydream of, like, superimposing of the boobs to the lights on the truck.
Yep.
So
Uh,
so in this one, the leprechaun tricks this guy into thinking that a lawnmower is this girl's boobs, and he goes to kiss the lawnmower, and his face gets chopped off. That was kind of a fun death.
yeah. Yeah, I'll allow it.
You had a Clint Howard sighting in the movie, so there was some fun stuff that happened. You had Tony Cox way before Bad Santa, making a
Uh,
cameo.
uh-huh.
Yeah, but then again, it shows you so from part 1 that took place in New Mexico, we're moving it into Los Angeles, kinda changing the scenery for part 2
Uh-huh.
already, showing you that they're willing to change up the locations, change up the characters to keep this franchise moving.
Yep.
Yeah.
And boy, is it moving from here now. It's now really going.
Yeah. Now there's no going back. We are a full-fledged franchise. And any more thoughts on 2 before we go on to part
No,
3?
please. No, please.
Alright.
You?
This is funny enough, after the first one, this is probably the one that I watched the most.
Really?
Yeah, you know? So,
Wow, okay. Alright.
it goes quick. I know what? I'm a sucker for anything that takes place in Hollywood.
Okay.
The film child in me.
All right. And I respect it. And this is where we've mentioned on a few episodes, like we don't always have to agree. And I don't actually think we're even disagreeing in this instance. I just think you are a nicer, more welcoming person to some of these things than I am.
Ooh, okay, so there was one death that really got and that wasn't actually the death, but there was one scene that really got me. It was
Okay.
there was that homeless guy, and he had the gold tooth,
Oh,
and then the
yeah.
leprechaun yanked the tooth right out of his mouth. Anything with teeth just has a primal response, and it gives me the shivers. So, that one had me.
Okay. I think that's a good call out. That one was sad.
Yeah. So, but I think they gave it the setup for it, they really gave it some thought. It was like the guy has a drunk uncle who runs this business giving tours, but he loves this girl, the love interest of the movie,
Mhm.
and he's supposed to bring her out on a date, but instead the uncle gets drunk, so he has no choice but to kind of cancel his date and drive his uncle's tour bus. And so he's touring, but at the same time, his girlfriend is being courted by another guy. So there was some stuff that you can connect to. They gave it a shot, you know.
Actually, this film, I actually think some of the regular storyline is better. Maybe that's what's frustrating to me about this particular film and why I felt the need to like really just walk away. I kind of enjoyed the personal relationships more than the Leprechaun storyline. So I was a bit more invested in terms of the people. Like I do like the bar scene when we are introduced to the uncle, um, and how he's also cut off and stuff. But yeah, I'm really okay never watching this one again.
I understand. Definitely not for everybody.
Yeah.
You ready to move on?
Yeah. Oof.
Leprechaun 3 came out the following year, and this one brings us to Las Vegas,
Hmm.
a fitting destination for our leprechaun friend who is after gold.
To the
So,
Shamrock Casino
the
specifically.
Shamrock Casino. They shot this whole movie in 14 days, which is insane for, like an actual studio
Yeah.
film to shoot an entire feature in 14 days.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So actually, it brings me back to another point. So this is the third film in the franchise to get theatrical release, and the first Leprechaun was Trimark's first film that they produced that got a theatrical release.
Hmm.
So they say that New Line is the house that Freddy built. So
Hmm.
Trimark is the house that Leprechaun built. And now we're in our third theatrical release in as many years.
Yeah.
Yeah. They actually shot it non-union, which is like really rare for an actual studio production. And they were actually only permitted to shoot in Vegas for 1 day, and a lot of the scenes of Leprechaun walking around Vegas were actually stolen. They just kind of, guerrilla shot Leprechaun walking around Vegas because they only had permission for 1 day, so it's kind of
Yeah.
funny when you hear, like, an actual studio film stealing shots, not having permission to shoot, but doing it anyways. Because we do it all the
Yeah.
time in the indie world, but it's funny when you see they still do that in the theatrical releases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thoughts on this film? Do you like this one?
Yeah, okay, this is another one about rules changing. One
Mhm.
scene, our main character, the guy, he starts turning into a leprechaun.
Mhm.
I don't remember that being introduced in any other movies. It doesn't, so they start kinda changing it up a little bit, adding some new stuff to the lore. I didn't realize that you could turn somebody into a leprechaun.
I didn't either, and also he starts wanting, like, specific foods, which I didn't know that leprechauns really ate. I don't know.
There was a good
So
death in this, though. One of the
mm.
characters was a magician, and I believe the actor was actually a real magician, and how
Oh.
the leprechaun saws him in half at the end,
Mhm.
which is kinda fun.
Mhm.
But that whole ending scene in the ma on the magic show was all shot in 1 day, which is pretty impressive
Mhm.
considering the length of the scene.
I really can't believe that it was done in 14 days.
Yeah.
Because
This
any of these, you think just the makeup and even basic effects alone, just the makeup would take hours. And then for setup, like that's pretty wild to think that this was done in just 2 weeks for a fully fledged film.
yeah. Yeah, that's, quite impressive. Oh, this
Mm.
was the movie that they added the to the lore about his if you have his coin, you can make a wish.
Mhm, mhm,
Because Caroline Williams' character it was fun seeing her in the movie, by the way. At this point, I had only known her from the second Chainsaw movie, so it was kinda cool to see her in this movie. But she makes
mhm,
the wish that she wants to be young again,
mhm.
and, like, she comes back out, she has a fresh makeover, and everyone's attracted to her again, which is kinda sad. It always kinda bums me out when I see, like, these characters, like, these showgirls that are over the hill now, and they're depressed because they're not
Oh,
hot anymore. That's always really sad because I know that's, like, a true thing that happens, and
yeah, they
so
can't get work.
I know. But then the
Oh,
leprechaun has his fun, and he makes her lips, like, really big, and he makes her butt huge and her boobs huge, so she kinda gets what she wanted, but he it's like the old tale of, like, the monkey's paw, and be careful what you ask for.
but that's what is there's another one. Actually, was it in is it in the second one? Where I think he does grant another wish as well. I forget which one, but also it's like an extreme, it's not well, actually, yeah, it's the beginning of the second one where the man who he's helping the leprechaun find his bride, the bride ends up being the man's daughter. And then he's like, please, like, I'll give you anything or whatever, to get his freedom, and he ends up dying. And I feel like you cannot take advantage of any wishes a leprechaun is willing to grant you. It will backfire.
Yeah, 2 had the if she sneezed 3 times, his wish comes true.
Hmm.
So we that never again did we hear about that in the next 6
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
So,
And I would have liked more of that, actually. I wish that they did keep that in or kept it going throughout the other films.
then we see that the magic changes throughout the films, and what we were saying earlier on, it's kind of like when you look at that's why the second Freddy movie, people aren't as excited about that one because the rules are different from the rest of the movies,
Mm,
and that stands out because, Freddy can leave the dream world at will. And so putting that in the Leprechaun franchise, when every movie there's new rules, makes it kinda hard to really follow it and be invested in it,
mhm.
you know?
Yeah. I just don't yeah, I don't think these are I just don't like each of them for what they are. There are fun moments in each of them, but none of them are just strong enough to carry a sequel. None of them are strong enough to carry storylines. The character development is really non-existent. So it's just kind of like if you just want a campy film to watch, it's not even easy viewing because you kind of have to pay attention because there's a lot going on interpersonally between what's going on, even though none of it seems to also matter. So it's a very strange thing.
Yeah, it's a strange series for sure.
Yeah. All
Which
right.
takes us to the strangest of them all,
Oof.
Leprechaun 4 in Space. What do you think
Oof.
about Leprechaun in Space? The first of the major franchises to go into Star Trek territory.
I mean, oh boy. Uh, I almost want to go out on a limb and say that it's my favorite of the whole series, just because this is the film that seems to lean into the campiness the most. It's the most absurd. It's the most ridiculous. It's pretty sexist. It's pretty like their costumes are not bad. Um, I didn't know that leprechauns could have an essence that could be reborn. Like, there's a lot of leniencies that occur in this film. on top of them just being in space. Like you start out meeting the leprechaun that's trying to marry this princess from another planet, and they're both plotting to kill one another after they get married so that both of them respectively could be rich and not married. And then there's an accident. Like it's just so far out that I have to respect it. Like I can watch it because it's so ridiculous, and you already know I love Jason X. I will watch any horror film in space. I'm a sucker for it. So I think it's awful, but it's probably the most fun. Like this is the one I think in the entire series that's probably the most fun to watch with a group of people.
I think my biggest issue with the movie is that the other movies, the Leprechaun is such a fantastical character and he's wisecracking and kind of goofy that when you set that in the real world, it kind of creates a juxtaposition of like reality and this crazy character. I think the issue I have
Mm.
with part four is that every character is insane in that movie. You have the the drill instructor with the metal plate in his head that just goes
Yep.
loses his mind. Then you have that one guy who was like that head evil man, and half of his body is this machine, kind of
Mhm.
like the robot in the Jetsons. And it's
Yeah.
just like you
It's
said
also
earlier.
sorry to cut you off. It also took elements I felt like of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Like when you see him through this, you see this like mad scientist who's trying to recreate his body through a TV, and it feels very much like Bogus Journey, the villain who's in a TV, and then you see him and he's like mostly machine. You could tell it's very animatronic. It's so hilarious.
Like this one, it was not trying to be serious. Like this was a spoof, you know, pretty much. Eh, entertaining enough. I have a very hard time watching it in one sitting. I remember when I was in high school, I faked sick because I rented the movie and I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to watch it before I had to return it. So I pretended I was sick and I sat home and watched Lep in Space. And
Ugh.
even then, I was like, oh man. Even then, the CGI of like the spaceships, I was like, oh
Oh,
god.
that spaceship is so bad. It's so bad. And it looks like it's on fire the whole time. Like it's so bad.
Oh. It's like no elements of the surrounding environments reflect off the spaceship. It looks like an N64 game, like the cutscenes, or even
Yeah.
maybe even earlier than that, maybe like a Saturn game. Like it was early CGI. I think they had a budget of like $80,000 for the CGI, which is probably a lot back then. But then again, CGI was probably more expensive back then, because not
I
everyone can do
actually
it.
don't know if that was a lot. It's definitely a budget, but I also kind of think that even at that point, like when did that was what, late 90s, early 2000s, so already things like
97, I want to say.
yeah, so already you had a number of films that were using CGI. So I think I almost get the sense that they probably focused most of the budget on maybe the spaceship, and that like they really needed more budget for the spaceship. It's so bad. Oh, it's awful. Yeah, it doesn't reflect anything.
There was a dark age of CGI. Like, if you look at I wanna say it was, like, 95 to, like, 2001. If you had a lot of money, like, Jurassic Park looked great. Like, if you had a
Mhm.
lot of money or Independence Day, if you had a big budget, your CGI would look pretty good. But there was, like, this lower tier of CGI that looked awful. Like,
Yeah.
the reptile in Mortal Kombat was if you've seen it nowadays,
Oh.
it's so laughable, you
I
know?
love that film.
No, the movie was fun, but, like, the CGI was awful. And this movie, the CGI was awful. Even in 2001, what was it? The Mummy Returns. The Rock as the main character, the CGI was so friggin' bad.
Yeah.
I remember watching that being like, "Oh my god, it's this is terrible." So I wanna say, like, if there was, like, a lower budgeted CGI that just did not look good. If you didn't have the money of a 200, $300 million blockbuster, your CGI was gonna look suspect at best.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of miss. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like well done CGI, but I think I'm also on the side of the fence that I just don't always love CGI. Like, I always think of it's not really fair to think of Jurassic Park, which used such intricate, amazing puppeteers and animatronics, and then you saw the CGI at that time, like what you were talking about, and there's like zero comparison. The animatronics used and puppets used compared to CGI were on such different levels. But now you look at CGI when it's well done, especially if it's well done and you go to, let's say, see something in IMAX, you can't really compare it to those types of puppets. But yeah, back then, there's something kind of sweet about it though. Not in Leprechaun in Space, but like in some of the other films, some of the bad CGI is just it's like simpler, you know? It's like you know that they really did their best. They tried so hard and probably had no idea what they were doing, and it still passes. And that's why Leprechaun in Space, that spaceship, it's like, did you guys even try? What are we doing?
Yeah, it was rough. The same guy who did that probably did the space stuff in Hellraiser Bloodline. It's just, I'm sure it was passable is a good word, because they probably
Hmm.
looked down on a small monitor like, "Oh, this looks pretty good. We can do it. We don't
Mm,
need to do models." And I
yeah.
guess it's one of those things that it's like almost like when we were playing PlayStation back in 96, 97. Man, that looked great. But if you go back and see PS1 graphics now, oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
So, maybe back then when they saw what they can do, make the spaceship in 3D to put in their movie, they may have been like, "This is freaking amazing." Like,
Right.
I've done the same thing with some of my movies. I made one movie that all the environments I made from scratch in CGI, and I had the main character green screened on, and I was so proud of
Oh,
myself. Yeah, but it's called The Confessional. You gotta check it out. It's still on my
I
YouTube
will.
channel. But when I
Uh-huh.
look back at it now, I'm like, "Oh, what was I thinking?" I thought it looked so cool. And I
Yeah.
actually had that playing at a on a big screen at, some horror festival I was at, I remember. I was so proud, but
Aw.
so I understand. I guess it's our eyes become more attuned as we get older and as, we get more accustomed to 4K. When you see something that's SD, it
Yeah.
looks way worse than it did as kids. Like, when we were watching VHS, when you would watch a movie off a TV, you would record, it would be 320 by 240,
Mm-hmm.
but when we were younger, it looked great. But
Yeah.
now if you try to watch it now, you're gonna be like, "Ooh, what were we thinking?"
Ugh. Yeah.
This is quite the side tangent for Leprechaun 4, but
This is where the conversation takes us. Just let it be. Let it
you
go.
see, I can't concentrate on this movie straight. I have to give myself mental breaks.
Well, I only have it in me to talk about the next 3. I'm gonna let you talk about 7 and 8, so
Well, alright, so now we go from the the deep
space
deep
to
space to the hood. Leprechaun 5, Lep in the Hood.
oh, oh boy.
What are your
Also,
thoughts?
funny, I think this is actually maybe the funniest of the films. This one, I don't think it's aged well at all. Um, Feels a little bit racisty. Um, but Ice T is in it, and he's fun. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the most comically inclined one. I feel like, whereas in Space they just leaned into the campiness, and this one I felt like they just wanted to be funny. At this point, they knew that probably, I guess, maybe Warwick Davis just didn't want to be serious at this point, and why would he be? It's the 5th film, so they just wanted this to pretty much be a comedic film, and it very much felt that way. Not not very good though, really. Like, also struggle. All these are now just we're on the permanent struggle bus with no stops.
Yeah, I liked the 3 main characters were great. I actually found them very entertaining. I can't tell you the characters' names, but it was 3 guys that are trying to be rappers but they wanna have a good message. They don't wanna be like gangster rappers, they wanna have a positive message,
Hmm.
and which is very unfortunate how the movie ends. It's like, for a movie that was kind of fun, it kinda has a dark ending, when,
Mhm.
Coolio not Cool Coolio actually makes a cameo, but,
Mhm.
Ice-T, who was the main villain in the movie other than Leprechaun, it's like he is k what's how would you describe his character? What he's supposed to be? He's kinda like the
He's like
local,
a
like
well, he is a rapper turned mogul, so he's, like, made his career, but it turns out that he actually trapped the Leprechaun at some point in his life, and really it's the Leprechaun that gave him the power to become this amazing artist and producer and now, like, music mogul. So all other aspiring artists wanna work with him or want to be under his wing so that they can, also be made, but no one really knows that actually he is not a self-made person. He has the power harnessed by the leprechaun. And doesn't he wear like the chain, like the key or something for the
Yeah,
lockbox on
the
his neck?
Leprechaun is now a statue when the movie begins, so,
Hmm.
I don't know, which makes me think that maybe 5 takes place after 6 because in part 6, he ends up landing in the cement and he which maybe that's why he's a statue in part 5, so maybe they happened reverse order, but anyways, yeah, so he has, like, this necklace on, and he also has this magic flute.
Hmm.
Is the flute
Right.
in this one or is the flute in part 6? I kinda get these movies confused, they're very similar.
I thought the flute was in this one.
Okay, so he has this all of a sudden he has a magic flute, which was never mentioned in the previous movies. Here's another
Mhm.
addition to the lore.
Yeah, it's a gold flute.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's in this one.
yeah. But I guess the big issue I have, so you have these 3 guys that the power of positivity, it's 2 of the friends get killed. They get one gets shot. I think the leprechaun kills the other one. And
Hmm.
then our main hero, like the main of the 3 boys, he kills Ice-T, like, shoots him. So it's like he wants his power of positivity, but he can't resist the temptation, he's forced to killing Ice-T. So it's like
Hmm.
and then he ends up getting possessed by the leprechaun, we find out. So
Hmm.
neither of our 3 heroes survive, and it's not like their whole aim for positivity paid off in some character arc. It's like, no, they ended up living a life of crime, you know what I mean? Or dying by after shooting somebody, and then he gets possessed by the leprechaun. I just felt like
Hmm.
for a movie that's kind of fun, it's kind of a dark way of ending it.
But that's what I mean, I almost prefer that. I almost prefer a dark ending. Like that's what like these films feel so silly, but they also feel like really they're not meant to be understood as so silly. Like there is meant to be a layer of maybe seriousness or thought provokingness in it and it doesn't exist. So I'd almost prefer this type of serious ending even if it is a bit bleak, you know. I mean, I kind of like the fight scenes in this as well. I like the idea actually that Icy is wearing the key to the the statue or whatever. There were certain parts of this film that I thought, okay, like that's creative, but again, like what we've already discussed, none of these factors have been mentioned or introduced previously. So it's confusing to consistently be given a new set of rules in what you would think would be somewhat the same world, you know?
Yeah. And dark it does get because there's also the scene when the leprechaun tries to rape the drag queen.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it gets very dark in this movie, but then you had the weed laced with four-leaf clovers to keep it light, so it's all over the place. The tone of this movie is all over the place.
Yeah. And then when you would think Leprechaun 6 Back to the Hood should be a direct sequel, but it's not really. Like it's like a totally different story.
All different characters. But
Yeah.
before we move on to 6, though, I have to say, after we've had the drag queen rape, we've had all 3 of our protagonists get killed. We end in a jolly music number of the leprechaun on stage rapping "Lep in the Hood, up to no good." That was stuck in my
That
head for a long time.
that was a thing like for any young listeners, that was a thing in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, really the 90s. I don't know why they chose to do this for, because I think the movie was in 2003. Um, but like, think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? When Vanilla Ice joins them, things like
Yeah.
that. Like that wasn't that was a thing, even just in terms of separate from films. Like families would go to see the performances on ice. You'd have the ice capades and all these weird types of shows that were musicals but were not actually musicals. Um, wasn't there even like some Super Mario Brothers thing like on ice or something? Anyway, so yeah.
And what a banger it was.
Can you want to sing it?
I think it played throughout the credits. I can't do him justice. I don't have the Irish brogue to do it justice.
All right, last
But
chance.
if anything, it's worth checking out Lep in the Hood to hear Lep in the Hood up to no good.
So crazy. So strange. Oh.
90 minutes of pain for 2 minutes of fun. No,
Uh,
it's okay. I'm gonna say it's not a terrible movie, but it's not a great movie. I found it entertaining. I'll leave it at that.
yeah, I do think it's better than the second and the third. You may disagree. That's okay. Honestly, I think on any given day, my order could change.
That's something that I might throw at the end of this, is our orders may be completely different, but am I willing
I
to
think
debate it?
so.
Not at all.
Right, right.
So now, which brings us to Leprechaun 6, Back to the Hood.
Which also involves a psychic warning. Oh my god, we're so all over the place.
I found Back to the Hood was actually I enjoyed this more than I did the first Hood movie. This actually may be in my top 3 Leprechaun movies, believe it or not.
Okay, do you want to talk about that? I'd love to hear.
I tell you, and this is coming from a white guy, this is my thought of it. It felt like admittedly, this is coming from me. I'm a white guy from Stamford, Connecticut, but it felt like it was set up like it was a Friday movie. And man, they went stereotypical in this. You had hydraulics in all the cars. They made a gold tooth out of one of Leprechaun's coins. It really was like the first maybe 30 minutes plays up straight like it's a Friday movie. And
Mhm.
then, it's comedic. Like it's not serious at all. Like this is supposed to be funny. You're supposed to laugh while you're watching it. And then
Mhm.
Leprechaun comes and, normal shenanigans begin. But it was this is the one he has no magic. All of a sudden, suddenly he lost all of his magic, which makes you think this is
Yeah.
a different Leprechaun because this is one he actually fights with his fists.
But I can't imagine that they're different. Maybe leprechauns are meant to look all the same. Maybe, but that just seems so weird, especially to not establish that in any of the other films. That there can be other. Oh my god, I'm so frustrated
So
with
he had
this
a full
franchise.
head of hair in this movie, but maybe that was one of his wishes. He wanted his hair back.
Also, doesn't this one have like animation in it at some point, like kind of early on?
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Man. I just watched it, so I should know exactly what you're talking about, but it didn't stick in my mind. But now that you mention it, I think there was some animation, and I can't tell you what the animation was. I
Uh,
think. Oh, you know what? You're right. No, when I think they're giving the backstory, it was
yes.
it was
Yeah. Yeah.
animated. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
Um, there's a street fight at the end that kind of takes more than a nod from Jason Takes Manhattan. When the guy is beating the crap, it's literally he puts his dukes up and he's fighting a leprechaun, and every time he punches the leprechaun goes flying because leprechaun, he doesn't have reach. And
Hmm.
most of the movies, he would just use magic and do something fun with killing the guy. But he's got his dukes up and he's trying to fight back. And eventually, the guy gets so tired of punching Leprechaun. Leprechaun just punches him right in the stomach, and his hand goes right through his chest. So kind of a nod to Jason Takes Manhattan and the fight scene in that. But yeah,
Yeah. It's rough, and then at the end, it's a matter of him just going after the gold coins, like and that's always, a part of the film, I guess, always kind of in these films. But this one, like the coins get stuck in concrete that's just being laid down, and then he goes after them, and oh my god, it's just such a mess. It's just like bad chaos.
And so, yeah, this is the one he ends. He falls off the roof, or he falls into cement, and so which makes me think. Part 5, he started as a statue, and in this one, he ends up in cement. So, is this one supposed to take place before Part 5?
I don't know. You know what? I never ever thought about it, but I actually think that's such a really good point. But I have no idea because also this one was done like several years after, so that would I don't know.
Because Part 4 clearly takes place at the end, because that takes place in 2096. So these movies aren't in order, so that would kind of make sense.
Hmm.
But
Yeah. You know what? Let's just say it's this is the prequel. They just didn't call it that.
yeah,
They just named everything incorrectly because I do like. I think I would find everything more believable in Leprechaun in the Hood, having known that this was like the setup for that film, knowing that he ended in concrete. So I kind of like that. That's what I'm going to tell myself is that actually 6 is the predecessor.
and sadly though, this is the last time that Warwick plays the character. This is his last outing
Is
as a Leprechaun.
I don't know if it's that sad. I'm done.
Although he has says that he may come back to it. He stopped doing horror movies because he had a son, but he says when his son turns 18, he's happy to do horror movies again. So maybe we'll get Leprechaun 4.0.
Can we just get a Willow sequel that's not a Disney TV series? That's all I want.
And keep it on long enough for me to watch it. I never got the chance to watch it. I figured it was out there so I could watch it whenever I want, but no, they pulled it within a couple months.
Same, and I heard they pulled it because it did so poorly.
Yeah,
So that's really a shame.
that's a shame. Well, now they could
All right.
bring it back out of the Disney vault eventually.
I hope so. I would like to watch it even if it is bad, just because I'm such a fan of Willow. I know you are too. So I would have liked to really have seen it.
But Disney does that a lot. Like that's been their MO for many, many years. That the VHS it
Hmm.
would come out for about a year and back on Disney Vault and for another 10 years, and then next generation comes and here a brand new movie that came out in 1940, but for the new kid generation is new to them. So maybe that's what they're doing with their streaming service. They'll kind of release things. I know
Hmm.
even like Mighty Ducks they took off, and I was kind of annoyed. Like I was halfway through the second season and they pulled it. I never got a chance to finish it. Not that it's a huge loss in my life, but that's kind of annoying when they pull these things.
Yeah, I actually we were watching it too. Like to digress from Leprechaun for a second. Again, as you can hear, neither of us really want to keep talking about this film series, but um, but the Mighty Ducks show was it really could have been better. I don't want to say it was absolutely awful. I liked certain parts of it. I genuinely, the actor from Gilmore Girls, like the main female lead character, I just don't like her as an actor. I do not understand the hype around her or even Gilmore Girls. That said, it was great seeing Emilio. He was not in it nearly enough. The kids were fine. It felt like a Disney show, and I wish that it had not felt exactly like a Disney show. I had higher hopes for it, but it was all right. I'm glad I did watch it.
Yeah, it's there was a lot of issues with it. The coach ends up being somebody that doesn't know the rules of hockey, never watched a hockey game. Some of the kids couldn't even stand on their skates, and suddenly they're world beaters. I don't know, but
Yeah,
that's your classic Disney setup. But
right. Yeah.
hey, we digress. We got 2 more Leprechaun movies to discuss.
That's it. 2 more. So, Leprechaun Origins from 2014, which is a WWE film, and it's got Hornswoggle in it for any wrestling fans out there. And the story here is, oh baby. So the character in this is a leprechaun, but they also name it that it's called Tuatha de Danann, which maybe is the formal name. I actually don't know. But essentially, a group of friends are in the Irish countryside, kind of vacationing. They notice some symbols. They go to a bar, then they go to their cabin, And TLDR, they are locked in the cabin. At least two of them need to be sacrificed because the owner, I think, of the bar and the people in this area are holding hostage the leprechaun's coins. They do not want to give the coins back to the creature, and the compromise is they will sacrifice humans for him to like eat and kill. And it, you know what, I'll say, like, this one is not funny. This one is a serious horror film. Something that was particularly annoying to me is throughout the duration of the film, when you start seeing the leprechaun creature who looks wildly different, like is a scary creature and everything, the film, like the video itself, keeps going in and out of focus, and it's an intentional thing to, like, I think, bump up the scare factor. It's very distracting, and it's confusing why they don't just show him consistently. So, like, a couple of times I can understand, especially if someone's knocked out. Like, there are instances where someone's injured and kind of like waking up or whatever, or is maybe woozy from losing too much blood, because at some point, like, they're also tied up to trees and stuff. But every single time you see him, it goes in and out of focus, and it's like almost shaking, and it's very, very distracting. That said, not a terrible film. I was telling Doug offline, if you watched the Friday the 13th remake with Jared Padalecki, it has that kind of vibe to it. Obviously totally different, but it feels like it was made similarly in that kind of style. Like, it's just a little bit darker by nature. The young people are really not that young. They're not old by any means, but anyway, it's okay. It's probably, I can tolerate this film. Didn't love, but could tolerate it.
So even though Origins is in the title, you wouldn't say that was an origin to the Leprechaun that we love from
No,
'93. Yeah.
not really. It's kind of different. Um, yeah, it's very different. It feels separate. And he doesn't even have any clothes on.
He's naked.
But pretty much, yeah, it's just like a flesh suit, it looks like. And you mostly only see him from like head up, but then when you do kind of see his body, it looks almost just like a flesh suit. Like, there's no hat, no clothes. He's like this character that comes out just to feed.
Yeah, since they gave him a name, that's clearly not the same one because he actually has a name, the Leprechaun. It's like Lubden Batowski.
The Warwick Davis one?
Yeah, that's actually the character's name. I think it's only mentioned once, but he actually does have a name. So it's clearly not the same guy.
No. I definitely, maybe I should have paid more attention.
Batowski. I love the last name. It's
Oh,
but with two T's. Batowski.
oh, nice.
So it's kind of
Nice.
fun.
Um, did you even watch this one?
I did. I watched it a while ago. I honestly don't remember it too well, to tell you the truth. It's not
All right.
as readily available as the others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and something else in this film is you do find out at the end that there are more leprechauns. There isn't just the one. So that also furthers my thought that these are very much separate from the Warwick Davis ones. But um, yeah.
So my
I don't
theory is
know.
correct. Maybe all these leprechauns are the different leprechauns from all the different movies.
Could be. That is definitely, like, I think that's certainly possible. I think I would just have liked someone to mention that in the film, you know? Like, in the first film, O'Grady, the main character who first traps the leprechaun, could have mentioned something like that, you know?
Right. Yeah, from the character design and the whole tone of the movie, I personally wouldn't consider it part of the canon, but it is in the box set. At the time, if you bought the 7 movies, that was one of them.
Mm.
So it is canon. It doesn't seem like it's the same universe or the same characters at all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
would you recommend it?
Um, you know, if the camera didn't keep going in and out of focus, because at least again for me, that was so distracting, and it became like a nuisance. Like, it was just annoying to watch because you do want to see this creature, and you never get a full it feels like you never really get this proper reveal. Um, honestly, if you're like, wow, I have to pick one to watch, I guess maybe this one because it's the most serious. It's one of the more gory ones. I don't know. I probably wouldn't recommend it.
Okay,
Like I
fair
want to
enough.
be able to recommend at least one, but I don't know.
Well, hey, we keep it honest here. We don't lie. We're not gonna have our fans
Yeah.
check out something that we don't like, or if we did, we'll be honest about it. So,
Yeah,
I
like
get
I'll probably never watch this one again.
okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I would ask the same to you, but you don't really even remember it. So never mind.
Hey, I watched 7 of the 8 of these movies before recording, so I tried my best. Literally couldn't find that one anywhere. But I know you
Yeah.
had watched it, so I figured one of us is good enough.
Yeah, definitely 1 through 7. The Origins is actually the 7th film. There actually is Back to the Hood. I can't remember, but all of them, I think because of March and for St. Patty's Day, they're all currently on Peacock if you have a subscription to Peacock.
Oh, it is? Okay.
But for sure, the 8th one, which I actually have not seen, I didn't even know it existed until right before we started recording. That is not on Peacock as far as I saw. I don't know where you can watch that one. So I'm going to let you talk about that one.
Yeah, well, Leprechaun Returns was a sci-fi original movie, came out 2018. And it actually beat the Halloween 2018 to the punch as far as being a legacy sequel that wipes away all of the sequels. And it's now a direct sequel to Leprechaun 1. And it takes place in the same house. You have a bunch of college students that kind of rent it out. And I think they're trying to like plant some sustainable food or make some sustainable energy. And then you have Mark Holton's character of Ozzy is actually in this. And yeah, it's a
Wait, the
direct
same he plays. Oh,
yeah, it's the
wow.
same
Okay.
guy, yeah. And like I mentioned, the coin that he swallowed in part 1, the leprechaun comes
Mhm.
back to get the coin out of his stomach. So sadly, he sees his demise.
Aw.
I apologize that I didn't give you a spoiler alert, but
Well, it's okay. I'm still
I'm
not
I'm
going to
trying
watch.
to soften the blow for when you watch it because it is
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And the main character is actually in the storyline Jennifer Aniston's character's daughter.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it was her house, I guess. I guess
Mm.
it was passed down to her.
Mhm.
It's never explained like whose house it is in the part 1. Like, are they renting it or did the dad buy it? But so yeah, so that's the premise for this movie, and it's actually not Warwick Davis, but it's supposed to be Warwick Davis's Leprechaun because it's designed to look just like him. And it looks
Mhm.
close enough. The voice is a little off, but it's close enough that it feels like okay, this is the same Leprechaun.
Right. Huh. I wonder if they asked Jennifer Aniston to be in the film.
They
Do you
did
think they even
actually,
asked her?
because
Oh.
her character's actually in it. Like you hear her voice at the end, and they actually got a voice double and Heather McDonald.
Mhm.
And sadly, though, her character is not in a good place. She kinda lost her mind, and she's, like, in
Mhm.
an asylum, and so, like, you only hear
Mhm.
her voice. No, I think she
Mm.
died. No, she did die off camera, but her character kinda lost her mind
Mhm.
because of what happened, which just doesn't
Mhm.
kinda make sense because she didn't get the same sort of trauma as Laurie Strode. Like, she was attacked by some leprechaun, but no one died, like, of the main cast. Like, the dad just went to the hospital, and then none of the other people died, so, like, I don't see why she lived such a traumatic life after the fact. Like, she got scratched on the leg. That's pretty much her trauma. But but I guess they had to explain a little bit of backstory for her
Uh-huh.
character. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess you figure she's just forever haunted. Like, I guess Ozzy's still in her circle, so I'm sure, his memories are with her. They're having nights of just drinking around the fire, remembering the leprechaun, wondering if he'll come back. Also, I mean, frankly, if the coin is still in his belly, you never know.
Yeah. Yeah, so Ozzy drives an Uber now, and he picks up the girl from the airport, and he's driving her to the cabin. He's like, I think I know your mom. You look just like her. She doesn't, but In the movie, in the movie, they say she looks like Jennifer Aniston, but
Oh,
not trying to knock the actress. Like
oh,
she looks fine, but
you're
it's
just
just
being
like
a
does
girl.
not look like Jennifer Aniston. A completely different look.
Oh
Other
my
than she's
god.
Caucasian with brown hair.
Hi. So
That's
would you
about it.
recommend it?
Yeah, no, it was good. I it was top 3 Leprechaun movies.
Whoa. Wait, okay, so let's not do full ranking of all 8. Let's do our top 3. You wanna go first?
I think you could do good, the bad, and the ugly for these movies, but okay, top 3.
Okay,
Top 3, Leprechaun 1,
okay.
Leprechaun Returns. Ooh, I wanna say either Leprechaun 2 or Back to the Hood. They
Oof.
tied.
Alright. I will say Leprechaun 1, Leprechaun Origins, just because I think it's different enough that you'll still be interested. And I hate myself that I'm gonna say this, but Leprechaun in Space, just because it's so darn absurd and ridiculous. Um, that's maybe what I'm gonna say. Like, but you have to watch that one with a group of people.
You know what? That's a good point. When you watch these movies in a group of people, it may be a different experience versus kinda watching alone at home and just
Yeah,
with the Shamrock Shake, you know? Watch it with a group of
that's true.
people, and they might be fun. I
Yeah.
think I probably would enjoy 4 better if it was a group of people laughing. Because I think if there's I'd imagine some of these movies, they're intending groups to just kinda be laughing with the movie.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I say these are not, like, grade A movies. Like, they're competently made, like, it's definitely, like, not like a C movie. Like, these they look good. They're, shot on
Hmm.
film, like, production values of the first several are pretty good.
Hmm.
It's just, like, the content-wise, they're not for everyone for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. And I agree. I think watching these with people is a better experience. Only I think one in Origins maybe you could handle watching alone, but the rest, like, they're tough, tough, tough to watch on your own. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
And I want to enjoy these more. And it's a bummer that they're not more fun because also most of them are meant to be so funny and like lighthearted and just I just can't do it.
What do you think the future holds for the Leprechaun franchise?
Oh my god, I hope there is not one. um I could see it I could see like a totally new one coming out like in another 10 years because it was almost 10 years since Back to the Hood to Origins, and then even the sci-fi one that was on sci-fi, so it's not like it got some feature film release, you know, or even straight to demand or whatever release. So I could see maybe in another decade someone being like, "Let's start it over." But I hope if they do, they just keep it more serious, less campy.
Yeah. The first 3 got a theatrical release, and then the Origins got a theatrical release, but
Mhm.
all the other ones were either straight to DVD or on demand or on Sci-Fi, I should say.
I don't know. Would you want to see a new rendition of it?
I'm sure we're gonna get one.
Ugh.
They pretty much they've done a lot with this franchise. They've been all over the place. Like you could set
Mhm,
Lep Goes West. There's
mhm.
there's some other things you can do with it. I just don't know. Like I don't know how much money these movies are making nowadays. That's kind of what the bottom line is. Like if it's making money, they're gonna make another one. I have no idea how much money these movies are making.
Yeah.
I should have looked that up before recording, but hey, I know following today's trend, maybe that you love so much, maybe they'll get a TV series.
Oh gosh, please no. Please no. It's already so much knowing that Crystal Lake is getting a series, Halloween is looking to get a series, 13 Ghosts is please stop.
You know what's crazy? They tried a couple crossovers with Leprechaun, and one was Leprechaun and Chucky, which is, I guess that makes sense. They're both the little tiny guys that do magic. But they tried to do a crossover with Candyman and Leprechaun. Like that seems so out there. They're complete different realities. Like that, I cannot imagine those things gelling well.
No. And also, okay, like regardless of how someone feels about Candyman, and my own opinion is I love that. I love both, or rather, I love all the sequels, including the new one that Jordan Peele did. I think that character rules so much. I love that. But that said, yeah, it's not a fair. That's not a fair fight. Like they're two wildly different. The only similarity is that they're both fantasy characters, but even Candyman did have an actual human life. And he's now just summoned, but there's a whole very important storyline there about how he kind of came to be, why he came to be, whereas Leprechaun is not this, like, oof, I didn't know that, and I don't like that.
The tones are completely off, and the only reason why that was suggested is after Freddy vs. Jason came out, the same company owned the rights for Candyman and Leprechauns, so they said, "Hey, why don't we cross them over?" Because crossovers were so big. You had Alien and Predator the next year after Freddy vs. Jason, so they attempted it, but I don't know how far it actually went, if there was even a script, but there was talk about possibly crossing them over, and I'm kind of glad we didn't see that. It just wouldn't work. It just does not seem
No.
like that would gel well at all.
I mean, Leprechaun versus Willow. I'm there for that.
Yeah, no, there's some possibilities for Leprechaun. Like, that's the thing. There may be a future for it because there's not a strict set of rules. The rules are broken in every movie, and they don't need to continue from the previous movie. So you could pretty much create a new Leprechaun at any point without hurting the fans of the previous movies.
Yeah, even, you know what? When I was rewatching all these films, I was thinking, like, do I even know anyone who's really just not even a big fan, just like a fan of this series? I really don't know anyone who is really like, do you know anyone who's like, yeah, I'm kind of excited, for my Leprechaun season to watch these films?
Other than my Lepapalooza, yeah, I don't know too many people that like it's no one I know is favorite franchise. But I think
Mhm.
like most hardcore fans have watched these,
Mhm.
you know? But I feel like people don't have that same attraction. Here's an interesting question. We should have asked Corey about it. Has he ever done a
Mhm.
leprechaun tattoo? Has anyone
Oh,
ever
I'll ask.
requested that?
Mhm. I'll definitely ask him. I wouldn't be surprised if he did or did something in the same vein as that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want anyone to think that we're crapping on these movies because that's not the intent. It's just
Yeah.
they're a little out there. They are what they are.
Mm.
It's a mixed bag. And that mixed bag could be dependent on the viewers. Like me and you have different tastes on these films other than the first one. They're entertaining, I'll say.
Okay, I don't know that you and I really have very different tastes on these films, in all honesty. I think we are just picking and choosing where we're being nicer on certain films based on the things that we do like. But I feel like you and I are pretty much aligned on this.
Well, I have Lep in Space at number 8 on my listing, and I know
But
you
that's
have it high.
okay. I don't have it at 8, but um, I could certainly see it in the eighth spot. So I get it.
Yeah. You know what would be a fun crossover?
Hmm.
Lep versus Jason X in space.
In has to be in space.
Yeah. Now we're
I
talking.
would,
Now we're getting somewhere.
yeah, I'd watch that.
See, we're
I
back at it now.
Yeah. Also, it has to have, I was going to say animatronics. It has to have like robot people because both of them also have, you know, robot people. So, yeah, okay, let's make that happen.
And they have to get somebody that's in their first year of college to do the CGI just so it kind of matches the
Yeah, because the
previous
CGI in Jason X
Lep
is
in
also
space.
terrible. Uh, well, so before we wrap, I was curious, can we do like a palate cleanser? Because I have a totally different palate cleanser question.
Sure.
All right. So, and before we do, any final thoughts on the series and the franchise?
No, not really.
Cool.
Get yourself a Shamrock Shake and enjoy Leprechaun 2. It's not as good as Jaws 2, but check
All
out a
right. So,
Leprechaun movie.
palate cleanser question is, what is a deep dive film that you have watched recently, or just a film that you would recommend that you think a lot of people don't know about?
Oh, a hidden gem. Actually, there is a movie that I don't know where you can stream it. I have the DVD. There's a
Hmm.
movie, it's an Australian production, came out in the early '80s called Fortress. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
So it's pretty cool. There is like it's like one of these towns that have one schoolhouse for every grade. So there's like a dozen kids in this classroom, and they get three guys wearing masks come and they kidnap the teacher and all the kids and hold them for ransom. And then the kids and the teacher they escape and they kind of survive. And I watched it as a kid. And funny enough, like I always thought it was the most violent, disturbing movie I ever saw until I watched it recently.
Hmm.
And it was extremely tame
Hmm.
because that was probably one of the more intense movies I had watched as like as a 5-year-old. So anything that was like more than PG was like, oh my god. But it's a fun movie. It shows you
Hmm.
how they all band together and all the kids have strengths and weaknesses, almost like a Lord of the Flies type deal, but they fight back and they fight off all of the bad guys. It's kind of fun.
Hmm.
Yeah, they kind of
I
hunt them
like that.
down.
I wrote it. Yeah, I wrote it down to try to watch, to try to find. Since you mentioned it might be tough to find.
Yeah. There is one scene though that I'll say it's with 2024 goggles is very hard to watch. So picture all these kids are probably 8 to 14. And there's a
Hmm.
scene when they are stuck in this cave and they find that if they swim underneath the water, they can
Hmm.
escape the cave. And
Hmm.
so all the kids take off all their clothes and then they go swimming. But there's like a shot of all these kids like wearing no clothes. I feel like that would never ever be shot nowadays.
No. Ooh.
So I
Ooh.
watched it. I felt so guilty. I had to turn my head away. I was like, "Oh God, you can't be looking at this." But yeah, but other than that, like it's a good movie, and I honestly have no idea where you can stream it. But Fortress,
Hmm.
it's an Australian movie, early '80s. I can't tell you who the actors were, but
Hmm.
it's actually a really good movie.
All right. Cool. I would love to see that. Not that scene, but I would love to watch this film. That
I'll,
sounds, yeah,
I'll let you
new for
borrow my
me.
DVD, and we'll
Okay.
discuss it in the next episode
Yeah. Okay.
or a future episode. How about you?
Yeah.
What's a hidden gem that you've watched recently?
So I feel, I don't think I've mentioned, I don't know if I have mentioned this on the podcast, but Tammy and the T-Rex. Speaking of animatronics, and I guess I have Jurassic Park on the brain. So Tammy and the T-Rex is from the early 90s, I think. Has a young Paul Walker, and I'm forgetting the actress's name, it's escaping me, but essentially it's, high schoolers, jock and like a cheerleader, and they're dating, and there's some jealousy that goes on. And anyway, the Paul Walker's character is in a fight, and they think that he is dead, and there's of course like some random scientists who decides to put Paul Walker's brain into this massive animatronic T-Rex, and um, Paul Walker's soul lives on in this T-Rex who loves this cheerleader, and it's the story of them trying to find their way together, also trying to get back at the scientist. And it's so odd, so like 80s 90s. It's just a very fun film, a very lighthearted horror film, a great B movie. And you know what, like, even, is it Denise Richards? Actually, I think that was the actor. Yeah, it's like a baby Denise Richards, and the acting is not too bad in it. So I just think it's a fun, light-hearted horror film.
Okay. Do you know where that's streaming by any chance?
When I watched it, or when I've seen it, it was on Amazon Prime. But I don't know if it's on Shudder or Tubi. I feel like it could be, but definitely when I watched it a while back, it was on Amazon.
So, those of you listening, you can do a Fortress and a Tammy and the T Rex double feature.
Hell yeah. Can be great.
Quite the viewing. Yeah. Cool. See, and we didn't think we'd have much to say in this episode about Leprechaun. This is probably 90 minutes, our longest episode yet. Who would have
Yeah.
guessed?
Oh, crazy.
You're getting a headache yet talking about Leprechaun?
No, but I'm so excited to be done talking about Leprechaun.
For now, until Jennifer Aniston comes back and we do L40.
Oh my God. In the West.
Yeah, a direct sequel to part 1.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's it for today's episode.
woo.
For those of you listening, you got to check out, we've recently launched a Facebook page for our Halloween candy movie. Coming soon with some
Yay.
exclusive information and exclusive photos. A trailer is coming soon, so keep an eye out for that.
Amazing. Can't wait.
And can you remind everyone where they can find you on the socials?
On Instagram, you can find me at Ghoulwhip, GHOUL_WHIP.
And you could find us at scared_stiff_films on the Instagram. All right, everybody, have a great St. Patrick's Day. Check out some Leprechaun movies, have a Shamrock Shake, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.